Hi you all, this is Rachel here, the Modern Shaman. I am glad you're with me for another YouTube video of the week. Okay, enough of that, let's get on with the question of the week. This one came in, you guys know I told you in the last video that I was going on a trip to Egypt and I was super excited about it. I have been wanting to go to Egypt since I can remember, since I was a child. I've been fascinated and drawn to that culture and that area, and so it was a lifelong dream and it did not disappoint. And this question came in because I did some posts on Facebook to share some of my experiences in Egypt. And she said, Rachel, it brought me so much joy to see your post on Egypt. I know that for the most part with the sacred sites all around the world, they won't even let people close their eyes, tune into the energy, or meditate. So I am so curious to hear how your experience was and if any messages came through for you while you were there. If so, I was wondering if you'd be open to doing a few YouTube videos on your personal experiences in Egypt and these sites. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm excited about this. I am a little bit long-winded when it comes to Egypt. We came home and we went to see my parents who were watching Poncho, our little pug dog. And of course, I wanted to just download every experience and share everything that was going on. So I was talking and showing some pictures, and my mom was like, you could teach like ancient Egyptian history. I was just like outpouring, and I was so excited about it, and I just love it. Like, it's so in me. And so it dawned on me that maybe not everyone is as into this as I am, but I am super fascinated by it. I always have been. And if you guys notice, I'm wearing one of my gifts. This was one of my anniversary presents from my husband. I love it. Can y'all see this? This is a vulture. So the symbol of the vulture with the outspread wings like that, if you see that in Egyptian iconography, it's a symbol of protection for royalty or sacred protection. It's like a higher level of protection. A lot of times you'll see the falcon, or you'll see the scarab with outstretched wings, or Isis with outstretched wings. But when you look at the pharaonic line and all the pharaohs, oftentimes they'll have a breastplate of a vulture, or sometimes they'll actually have it on their headdress, their crown. It's a vulture with outstretched wings, because they were so broad and they could take anything and feed on it. They were the ultimate level of protection. So anyways, this is the necklace that I have, and it's this huge piece of lapis lazuli, which is my favorite stone. It has been since I was a child. I've probably mentioned that before in other videos on stones and rocks, but lapis is my absolute favorite stone. And there's a story with that. When I was a child, my dad took me to my first stone store, and this was in Silverton, Colorado, and we used to go there and camp in the summers, and they have lots of stones there, and I was super drawn to lapis, and I got this little tiny pendant, and I put it on just like a piece of leather that we got at some leather shop, and we oiled it, and I wore it like every day. I never took it off for years. I just wore it underneath my clothing. It was like a long piece, you know, it sat over my chest. And I just loved it. I don't know why, but it was my favorite stone. And in my head, it was just an intuitive pick. So I still love it. These are my lapis earrings. Anyways, the idea of protection is still very relevant for us today in so many societies. And I love how this is almost like a breastplate over the heart chakra and the higher heart chakra, which sits right here. And then the lapis earrings too, as a protection and a covering for the ears. So much of the information that comes in, and the frequencies and the vibrations that come in, that we take in, come in through our sound frequencies. So in our human body, what better locations than to have jewelry that amplifies a sense of protection? I just love that. Okay. On with my experiences. There's so much here. I went to so many different sites. This trip was just like epic. And so I might have to break it into a few videos because I'm already at 9 minutes, y'all. And I will tell you first, about the pyramids because I think beyond any other site that we visited, this was the most profound by far. I think it was the most profound travel experience I've ever had. And I've been to phenomenal places. I love to travel. But this, yeah, this like topped them all. So we went to the pyramids. Jude had arranged like a VIP tour. And I've done VIP tours at sites before. We did one at the Vatican also. But they typically are like with you and maybe 20 other people. It's a very small, intimate group. And you have kind of private access to locations in that group, or maybe there's 100, but it's not like thousands, because that's one thing about Egypt. I mean, it is probably the top tourist site in the world. And so everywhere you go, there's just like hundreds and thousands of people. It's packed. But he had arranged this VIP tour, and it was a sunrise morning ceremony tour. So we were going to do it early before it opened to the regular public. Again, we did this also at the Vatican. We went before it opened to the regular public and got to see the Sistine Chapel. And it was awesome, but it was nothing compared to our pyramid tour. Jude and I were the only people in the entire pyramid. And I about flipped out. I had no idea. Our guide was like, yeah, you practically rented the pyramid for 2 hours. You're going to be the only ones there, except for the people, the security guards that like let you in, that are there 24 hours a day, and they unlock it. And we got to go into all of the chambers, which they only let the general public into one of the chambers, the Grand Gallery. And like, it's the largest of the chambers. So we got to go into the Subterranean chamber, the Queen's chamber, the King's chamber, the Grand Gallery, and we got to just have it to ourselves. So I was toning and chanting and meditating and touching and just like engaging in every way, shape, and form. I mean, I was in nirvana. Like, it was awesome. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. Okay, let me see where I want to start with this. About what is shareable, really. I will say also, when I walked onto really the plateau even of Giza, because you go from Cairo and you drive over to the city of Giza, and it's just like a little bridge over there. It's a separate little area. I just burst into tears. Like, I walked barefoot. I kept wanting to be like totally barefoot, and the plateau and all of the black basalt. So around the pyramid is the black basalt floor. And the floor, you guys, it's probably like 6 feet tall, okay? This was major in terms of grounding. The energy was so grounding that you just feel absolute peace, at least for me. And this was like before the sun had risen, so it was dark and quiet and absolutely peaceful and so grounding. I mean, it probably felt like just being in the Amazon or something, where you're surrounded by nature, and yet it's through your feet. It's so precise. That's another thing. So we go into the entrance in the north. The entrance is on the north side of the pyramid, and we're standing at the entrance, and I was like, okay, this is the northern entrance, right? And the guide's like, yes. Look at your compass. So we pull up our compass on our phone, and it is at 0 degrees north. Like, it is so precise. And literally our Egyptology and our current study and the way that they talk about this is that they built it based on the stars, the North Star. I'm like, how in the world did they get 0 degree north in the entrance? I mean, you're standing at the entrance and it's 0 degrees north on the campus. On the compass. It is incredibly mathematically precise, astrologically precise. So it's, yeah, beyond comprehension of the way that we create now. So the first entrance that we went into was the Subterranean chamber. And this is way down there. And you have to get on your hands and knees. And this is in the limestone at the bottom. And you can tell that this area has been highly affected by water. So there's a lot of watermarks kind of coming through. They don't say that, but you can see it. It looks completely different than the other rooms. It's not granite, first of all. And it looks unfinished. They actually had a ton of just random stuff in there because the public doesn't get to see it. So it's kind of like a storage room. They had random like boxes of different equipment and things that they use. But we still got to meditate in there. So when I was meditating in there, the first energy I got was just water. It just felt like I was underwater. The whole imagery, but it was peaceful. It wasn't like frantically drowning. I just felt like I was underwater. And I couldn't necessarily hear any water, but I just felt like it. And it felt like it was all the way around me. And this also was incredibly grounding. Water has a sense of movement or flow, but when I was in the subterranean chamber, it actually felt like still water, like a very, very deep ocean, all right? To where it's silent and full. And this was all the way through my body. I think when I say that it's grounding, it's that everything is felt in its totality. If you do energy work, okay, so if you're watching this video, you're probably an energy worker or familiar or have had energy work done. It has momentum, it has direction, and it has a sense of shape to it, right? Even when I teach it, we can shape it into an arrow, we can push, we can pull, we can suck it out with pipes, we can diffuse it with our breath. The energy in the pyramid is it's as if it's completely contained. And so when you're in and you're sitting in it, it's completely even through the body. It's not like you feel it coming in over here or you feel it coming in over here, or when you get something visually, you get it coming in through your third eye. There's no direction. It's just like you're sitting and the totality of your experience is being in that energy. And I think because of the structure, it creates that. And then because you're in a cavity or vacancy inside of that structure, it mimics the same feeling as if you are in energy. Not as if you're pulling it or you're feeling it or you're connecting with, you're it as you're in there. That's the best way I can describe it. And the tones in that subterranean chamber were very deep. So each time I would go into a chamber, I would essentially kind of hum or ohm or vibrate with a sense of frequency, because I couldn't bring anything in. They don't let you bring anything. So I didn't have any sort of like drum or equipment or anything. Even with filming, they wouldn't let me film any of the meditations. They wouldn't let me share any pictures of some of the experiences there. Because they were kind of giving us special access to it, and they didn't want the general public to see it. It is very locked down on that kind of thing. Like, Egypt is super strict about the message that goes out that they are told to say, and the Egyptologists and those that were our tour guides are very scripted. And even when they go off script, they'll say, and they say it all the time, it's like the same phrase, "This is my personal opinion, but and don't put this on camera because this is my personal opinion." So they'll let you video them giving the historical references and all of this that is part of their training, but they won't let you videotape them giving their personal perspective or anything like that. So they're very, very cautious about the message that's put out to the world, which is fine. But all that being said, they wouldn't let me tape any of it or share any of that. So it's kind of like I have to share post experience. So we went from that subterranean chamber back up and then into the Grand Gallery. So if you've seen the Grand Gallery, you've probably seen it before. It is the one that looks like an interior pyramid, like a step pyramid. And it is huge. You can't tell by the video or the photos how big it is, but it is long and it is very tall. I don't remember this. I'll have to look up the numbers in terms of actual dimensions, but it's huge. And when you're in here, to me, this is the area that has movement to the energy. There is, and it's on an incline. Okay, so it's not flat at all. The only flat areas are in the rooms themselves. But as you're walking, like the chambers to get there, or they're all on inclines or diagonals and things like this. So the Grand Gallery has a entrance in the center of it that goes diagonally kind of down on a small incline, and this is the Queen's Chamber. And then there's one at the top, if you have to walk all the way up the King's Chamber, or the Grand Gallery, and then there is a long corridor that goes into the King's Chamber, and that's at the end of that. So those are both in granite. This is where the granite and the stones begin to shift, and this is where you see the difference in architecture. So everything is very precisely cut. In the subterranean chamber, if it was cut at one time, it's no longer cut. It has shape of, like I said, water or erosion and all of that. The rest of the interior of the pyramid, at least the chambers, do not. The walkways that were kind of cut out to get there also have a sense of movement or like a cave-like structure. It's not architecturally precise, and they're not with the blocks. The blocks, okay, so on the inside of the Queen's Chamber, this is 20 minutes. I'm gonna try to cut myself short, you guys. The Queen's Chamber, this one also has one area that almost looks like a window frame, and it mimics the same interior structure as what is in the Grand Gallery. So it is these stair steps that are ascending up to a central point, and you can stand inside of it like it's like a window frame. However, they were storing like random stuff in there because the public can't see it. So it was just like a junk room. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm sitting in there, and I'm aware though that the toning and the things that I'm doing in the Queen's Chamber were kind of bouncing off a lot of random objects. It wasn't a pure room. So it is what it is. But I still took it all in and enjoyed the energy of that. The Queen's Chamber energy felt more active to me. And it was underneath the Grand Gallery, okay? And so I felt like some of the energy from the Grand Gallery was bouncing off of those side walls, coming through the chamber into the Queen's Chamber, and then also mimicking and having this upward kind of momentum. So the energy feels a lot more active in there. And I kind of sat and I tried to stand and sit and touch and kind of interact with the energy of the quartz coming in, because there's quartz in the granite. If y'all know granite, it has specks of quartz also. And these are amplifiers of energy. And so having known that, I was trying to connect with what was being amplified in there. And so much of it was the momentum upward, okay? So when I went into the King's Chamber, that's where I spent the most time. This is the most famous room. And if you've seen many pictures, they have the sarcophagus, what's called the sarcophagus. It is the empty, it really just looks like a large holder. It is made of the same granite. It is the size of a person. And I will say, I can say it on this video, but I couldn't share pictures. They let me get inside of it. They let me meditate inside of it. And I laid inside of it. Then Jude and I laid inside of it together, meditated together. I did it by myself. I laid up against it. I also meditated on each one of the walls to feel the difference in the north, south, east, and west, and the directional energy, and meditated. So I was toning in there and singing. It was amazing. And all of that being said, where do I want to go first? Each of the directions had a very distinct energetic expression through the body. Okay, so I'll just give you the energy read first. Okay, so on the southern wall, which I was actually drawn to first, this is known as the negative wall. And I was like super drawn to the negative wall. I like put my hands on it, my third eye on it. I wanted to like rest my belly on it. Like I just wanted to get flat against that wall and almost to like crawl inside of it. And I had the awareness that it was essentially clearing me or balancing me or bringing it. I needed that negative polarization of energy. And it's not negative in terms of negativity. it is negative in terms of energetic balance, all right? So think of a magnet. It's the negative polarized energy to balance the positive. So I think I had active energy already inside of me from the Queen's chamber. So when I went into the last chamber, which was the King's, I almost had to like be drawn into that negative side of the wall to kind of balance and settle down the energy that was active from the Queen's chamber. So I went there first and spent time there. When I was toning on that, the sound in the really all of the pyramid, but especially the King's chamber, is acoustically incredible. Okay, it's like you could just barely talk or barely hum, and it reverberates all the way through you. Remember how I said that the energy is like you are inside of it. Okay, it's like your body is inside the consciousness of that room, instead of like I'm feeling it come through me. It's like you're wading in it. You're just like submerged. It's everywhere, completely dispersed. And so the frequencies of the vibrations were like that too. So when you hum, it's as if it's coming in at you from every pore. It doesn't feel directional. It feels like whatever's coming out of you is coming back in perfect equilibrium, all sides, all at once. The sound is equally loud all the way through the body, not just through the ears that typically receive sound waves. It's amazing acoustically. And the tones there, I kept being drawn to almost like an om. So I was like humming it, and then it would just reverberate and kind of wrap me in the hug of that. So I just kept doing that. And eventually our guide was doing it. So he would guide us in there, tell us where to go, and then he would like leave us alone and let us be in there. And he was doing the same thing. And then I went to the positive wall. The positive wall had the stillest energy, I would say. And this is where I did my longest meditation. Yeah. And that was quiet. I didn't want to hum. I didn't want to do any sounds. I just wanted absolute stillness. And that was the power of that north-facing wall. It felt very positive energetically in that I was receiving. I didn't want to give out sound. I didn't want to express. I was just receiving from the positive charge. And so I just sat and meditated in complete silence and stillness there. Now, I will say this is where I started to get all of the communication and imagery. The first imagery that came was of other chambers up above me. I was sitting and I had my eyes closed, and I basically started seeing little square boxes, which reminded me of little Tetris, Tetris, like little square cutouts and rectangular cutouts kind of hovering in very direct locations. And it didn't matter where I moved my head, they stayed. So they were unmovable even with my sense of movement. And I had an awareness that there were other chambers above the King's chamber. 5 of them, actually. I could probably sit down and map them out if I sat down and did it. But at the time, I didn't have any paper or anything. I just kind of observed, and I was in that, like I said, receiving mode, because so much of that energy coming through, even though it was on the directional wall and I had my back to it, I was submerged in this receiving energy that was coming all the way through every aspect of my body, my being. I was just saturated with it. So that was the first thing that came through. And then I in my speech, or in my own clairaudience, I said, I'm here, as if I was like doing roll call, like here, present. It just kind of came up from inside my chest, when I say my chest, like my heart chakra. This is where it was speaking from, not inside my head. And if you're familiar with your psychic senses, clairaudience can come, sometimes it comes from outside. If you're very subtly aware of it, sometimes it comes from inside of your head or around your third eye, your pineal, pituitary. Sometimes it comes from your higher heart, your central heart can come from a lot of different areas. Your solar plexus, your sacral chakra. This one came from my chest. So I would say in combination with heart and higher heart started speaking. I'm here. Like I've returned. Like I said, it felt like a roll call, like I'm checking in. And to me, there is life underneath the underneath the pyramid. And I say like way underneath. We're talking like, I don't know how far down, but it felt like labyrinth of earth core or something. Okay, not just like caves that would be accessible. Maybe they would be accessible, but to me it felt like living entities that are still within the earth under the pyramid in connection with the energies there. They don't feel physical to me. So these feel like etheric beings in the way that I was speaking. And for me, it felt like it was a returning or like a checking in of something that was started a long time ago that I don't think is finished, but definitely had a sense of reconnection and checking in for my intention there. I kept expecting for them to give me directions, to give me guidance, to give me language, and it was not languaged at all. There was no language. There was awareness. So this was just a higher level of telepathic claircognizance of you are here, we are here, it's time. And I had this awareness that the time, I say time, the now moment that I was present in had perfection in it. So cosmologically, in terms of the galactic center, in terms of the solar system, in terms of the planetary location, in terms of my geospatial awareness on the earth, everything felt precise. I think that's the best way I can language it. I don't know if you've ever felt that when you've been in a meditation in a very poignant moment energetically. There is an awareness sometimes that your location spiritually, physically, emotionally, and I would also say cosmically, is purposed. As if you yourself are that portal, right? And the key has kind of locked in time and space in that moment. That's what it felt like. It's time. It's the right time. I am there in that perfection of connection. And it simply felt like a portal unlocking. When I say portal, I don't want to sound all like new agey, because I realize what I do is new agey. But I don't feel like that. I feel like it's ancient. It is absolutely, it transpires any sort of religion and people group and culture. It's so organically our soul's nature, psychic ability and portals and all this kind of in and out connection. So much of that felt like it unlocked for me what was meant for me. To be there at that moment in that emotional state. I told you I was crying a lot. It was very powerful. I wasn't sad, I wasn't happy. It was just, I don't even want to say overwhelming. I don't know. It was emotional. It was just emotional. I'm at 33 minutes. Let me say the last thing about my meditation in the King's Chamber. When we were allowed to go into the sarcophagus and meditate in there, this was a to me, it felt like interference energy, but very, again, precise. Now, interference, if you're aware of, like, TVs work with interference signals. That's why sometimes if you were back in the day like me and you could turn the channel and it would be like fuzzy, like psh, you know, on the TV screen, because the interference wasn't quite finding or didn't have a frequency matching up. So it felt like the chamber, that sarcophagus, brought the frequencies together in a way that interfaced and brought up, say, the TV channel. So to me, it was the perfect intersection of bouncing those frequencies off. When I was toning and chanting in there, I would say it was 3 times louder than anywhere else. It was as if I was under a microphone. Everything was so much louder. Even when someone was like at the edge of the chamber, like where you would crawl in and they would speak, I could hear it almost louder in the sarcophagus, which you would think that the walls of granite, the sarcophagus is like, it's like this thick in the walls, just of the sarcophagus around. I mean, it's a good like 5 inches thick all the way around you. And even laying in there, I could hear everything louder. So the interference of frequencies was extremely powerful, extremely powerful. And this was almost, like I said, like a magnifier or an amplifier of bringing everything together and aligning it. So part of it was my own frequency, or the human energy that was in there, felt like it was interfacing and having an interference frequency with all that was coming at me. Whereas before I felt like I was sitting in it and really I had no form, or I was very unconscious of my own body, unconscious of my own energy. It wasn't true when I was in the sarcophagus. I felt very directional, similar to the way you would feel if you were sitting at the captain's chair on a ship, right? Like, this is the directional location. So from here, I felt like I was in charge, and I had a sense of like a captain's chair. That's the best way I can say it. And I was very conscious of what I was doing. This is probably where I got the most emotional, because it had the most intense energy and reaction. And so I was just crying. Jude thought I was laughing. My husband was like, "Are you laughing?" Because I was like, okay, I just want it silent. And I kept like, like this, like, and we were both in there together. And at one point we were laying down head to foot, you know, like this way, so we could both fit in the sarcophagus. And I was just like vibrating with so much energy and tears and just overflow. This was the most intense, and I was aware that what I was sending out, like I was in charge when I was in that sarcophagus, even though I didn't quite have control of myself at that point, because it took me a while to calibrate with it in there. Okay. And then, y'all, this is almost like 40 minutes long. This is going to take forever to upload. If you're still with me watching this video, I'll say the last thing, there was a power wall. And this was on the west side, which is interesting because in Egyptian culture, west is where they bury the dead. It's where, actually their word for death is westing, going to the west. They didn't even have a word for death because they didn't really believe you ever died. You just moved to the west. It's like you just went to another location. You just moved to the west. So anyways, this was the most active wall. It's known as the power wall. Like our person coming in, it was like, yeah, that's the wall of power. To me, it came straight into my belly. Now, it didn't feel like it would have that reaction to everyone, but to me, there's a lot of vacancy and a lot of need for healing, because I'm still healing from my abdominal surgery when I had the total hysterectomy. So there's still a lot of scar tissue and healing, and my body is definitely doing much better, but there's still a lot of healing needed there. And man, it just like shot in through my belly, almost like somebody did a sucker punch into the belly. And I was just holding myself there, and I thought, my hips are going to explode. There was so much energy going into my stomach. And I just received and received and received and tried to let it go through my bones and absorb through the bones, because I could feel it more in the vacancies of the tissue where there was more open. And I would say in the areas that had wounds, that were wounded, the power came in. And this to me felt like a healing chamber at that point. That was the last place that I went, actually. And I couldn't stand there for very long because it was so powerful. It almost made me not have like an anxiety attack, but it started like my heart started racing. And when I held it too long, or if I laid flat like that against the wall, it was so active I couldn't hold it for too long. So I held as long as I could and tried to absorb through the marrow of my body, and not just the wounds and the tissue and the organs, but into something that felt stronger, because the energy was so strong itself. I felt like I wanted to absorb it with the strongest aspect of my human form. So I sat and absorbed. Yeah, I think I'm going to end the video here. I will talk more, I promise, but this one's already gotten so long, you guys. So I will share more next week with another video. Blessings.